It looks like we have Congressman Arrington on line 2. So let's go ahead and get to Congressman Arrington. Congressman Arrington, how are you doing there in Washington?
Well, not as good as I'd be doing in West Texas, but we're hanging in there, and we're anxious to get back to work and to some semblance of normal, and let the American risk and the animal spirits of capitalism take over and manage our health in the process, and be smart but use common sense. But let's get America back to work.
So
You're exactly right, Congressman, and that's exactly what we were talking about much earlier. I take it since the Republicans and Trump wants to open the country back up, the Democrats and Nancy don't, right?
Well, it sure appears that way when the centerpiece of our recovery is the lifeline to small businesses in the form of this SBA bridge loan that's being administered through the private sector, through banks. Just with 6 banks there in West Texas, 8,000, this is a survey of just 6 banks, 8,000 loans, over $1 billion that has been distributed, that is liquidity. It's the lifeblood. It means they'll keep people on the payroll, and it will support our working families in West Texas. The problem is we're out of money, and you still have people that have need, and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer are talking about things that are not relevant because we have plenty of money still in these other funds. And in fact, we don't even know if we will need all that money or if it's even working. Meanwhile, we've got folks flat on their back that are actually going to be the drivers in our economic recovery. So
are they going to come to their senses at some point and put some more money in that program?
Well, I hope so, because like I said, that program's working. I get texts and calls all the time and emails. I just talked to a guy in Abilene that said he has 200 employees. He said without that PPP loan, there was no way he was going to survive. And that story is by the tens of millions going to be retold. And it's Pelosi and Schumer playing politics with it. All we have to do, that thing is already prepped as a bipartisan issue, and we could run that through the gauntlet real quickly, and in a matter of days have that recapitalized. I would not spend money on the other buckets. I certainly wouldn't distribute more direct checks. I don't think that's necessary. But where we see needs as this thing unfolds, I think we should look at it. Right now we have one big need, and it's small businesses getting that lifeline.
Yeah, so I do have a question as far as what they're trying to do. Are they trying to stuff other things in there, or are they just trying to come up with their own thing? I mean, what is it that's making them hold up?
Well, they want to spend more money now. Anytime that we need to spend, look, we asked for $1 trillion for the first big tranche in this most recent relief and recovery package, and it went to $2 trillion in a matter of days before we could pass it. We went along with that because we knew states and local governments needed some assistance. We knew hospitals and other providers did. But those funds haven't even been spent a third of the way through their program, through their funds. And so we can talk about that and look at it and see where those needs are, but there's not a need now, and we shouldn't be spending money just to spend it, just to make ourselves feel better or be able to tell somebody, just to be a politician and say, hey, we put more money in this or that. Let's put money where the need is, and we know the need is small businesses, and that is the lifeblood of not just West Texas economy. It's more than half of the entire United States economy.
Yeah. All right, Congressman, we have to take a quick break right quick, and we'll be right back. Got a lot of questions for Congressman Arrington, and we'll be right back with Congressman Arrington. All right, right back on the morning show. We're going to jump right back to the phones with Congressman Arrington. Congressman Arrington, again, thank you for coming on. One of the questions that we had is we're looking at kind of reopening things slowly. It looks like President Trump wants to give it back to the governors. What are your thoughts on his plan to open up everything? I guess everything.
Well, I think federalism, which is the division of power between Washington state and local governments, is in our favor in that every state's different, every city's different, and quite frankly, every family and individual is different depending on their activities and their place of work. And I think the idea is let's just be smart, let the circumstances dictate how you take precautions. If you're a vulnerable with senior with underlying conditions, then you need to continue with some extreme measures because of your risk level. But there is no such thing as zero risk in anything in life. And while Dr. Fauci has done a good job of providing counsel to the president and all of us on the effects of the virus and the ways to mitigate it, that cannot be the only voice in this conversation. We need business leaders, economists, because as we say, the cure can be worse than the disease. And if we ever hit that point, and we're at 22 million on the unemployment rolls today, but if we ever hit that point where we have a sustained recession or depression, there will be a whole lot worse damage to families and individuals from healthcare metrics on down and across the board if we don't turn the lights back on in this economy. We can do it in a smart and responsible way, and I think that having states and local leaders take the lead is the appropriate approach in this country and in any country, but it works in our favor because that's how our democratic republic is set up.
Hey, Congressman, it seems to me like when you're talking about the medical community, they're viewing this through only one thing, and that is saving lives. They don't even consider the damage that it's doing to our economy and how that might affect our lives.
That's right. You're exactly right. And that's what I've been saying to my leadership and friends at the White House, but also in Congress, to say we can't just have folks, epidemiologists and other healthcare professionals whose success measure is health and safety be the only voice in the discussion. And
right.
We're all starting to reorient around the economic recovery, which is appropriate. And balancing the two is possible. You can do it responsibly, and you can do it as the circumstances on the ground dictate.
Yeah, Congressman, it's becoming more and more apparent that China lied and withheld information that should have been released. And it looks like now that both the our WHO and the United Nations have covered up for them. Donald Trump already took money away from the WHO. Are there other steps that need to be taken to tell China, hey, we're not going to put up with this?
Absolutely. China's closed and controlling communist regime has always wreaked havoc on their citizens, and now it's wreaked havoc on the world. And WHO Director General is also responsible. He should be fired immediately. The president was right to withhold. We should do a full investigation. All things point to this cover-up and to this virology lab, and we should get restitution because people died and a lot of money, trillions, will be spent because they managed this so irresponsibly and willfully withheld information that could have made this a much smaller to-do. Instead, it's one of the worst pandemics we've ever seen, and certainly the most costly.
So it sounds also to me like they've said that the most important person when trying to stop a pandemic like this is patient zero, and it sounds like they knew who patient zero was all along and didn't release that either.
Well, they knew a whole lot about the where this started, how it happened, not just patient zero, but how this virus was spread and operating, and they didn't let our researchers, they didn't let our government officials in on any of that information, and they still haven't been fully transparent. You know, they just recently upgraded their numbers by 50% in terms of the death toll and cases in Wuhan. That happened because of the scrutiny. They know that the hammer is going to be brought down, and they're trying to do their best job of cleaning up the mess, but it won't matter. We know what happened, and they're going to have to pay for it and be held accountable.
All right, Congressman, we do have to take one more break right quick, and we'll be right back with Congressman Arrington. This is Matt with News Talk 95.1 FM, 790 AM KFYO, and I'm going straight to the phones. We don't have a lot of time, but Congressman Arrington, one thing that we see a lot in the text messages is that they want to know, have there been any talks at all about how to pay for this $2.2 trillion we've already put, and anything else that they might add in later?
Well, of course they haven't talked about how they're going to pay for it. They just print money here, and they borrow from the likes of China and our own people. This is a deferred tax on our kids. I have strong feelings about it. In fact, I would let my constituents know I have a meeting today to figure out how we can put budget reform measures in place so we can force Congress to deal with that as we recover. I think that's critical. I'm leading the charge there. I can only hope we get it in the legislation, because the only way Congress is going to deal with that issue, and I think it's the long-term biggest potential crisis, is to force Congress to do what every other institution and a business and family does, and that's manage their resources responsibly.
So do you think this is going to cause mass inflation as far as, are they just going to have to print the money for this?
Yes, I think it's going to cause inflation. I think it's also going to exacerbate a potential sovereign debt crisis if we don't do something about it. I agree 100% with your caller.
All right. Congressman, we have about 30 seconds. Anything you want to say?
Proud of our healthcare workers on the front line. God bless them. Stay safe. We're praying for you. And let's get America back to work. Go West Texas.
Thank you, Congressman Arrington. Thanks for calling, and we'll have you on again soon. This is News Talk 95.1 FM, 790 AM KFYO, and we'll be right back after the check of news and weather.